Welcome to Dead Genre Chronicles, a critical podcast on the diversity of JRPGs. Drawing from the origin of the genre to the present day, every month we play through a JRPG and we invite you to play along and send us your questions and thoughts on it. I'm Devin, the host with the most stars of destiny.
I'm Becky, I'm noisy and antagonistic.
I'm Leroy and I'm a huge nerd.
That never is inappropriate, huh? This episode's topic is going to be Suikoden 2, a PlayStation game that is part of a series very, very loosely based on a classical Chinese novel. Somehow this game is sometimes referred to as the best JRPG ever, and that is why we played it, and I regret everything.
Wait, Suikoden it's fan fiction. This is a fan game.
Yeah, it really is. And the thing is, Leroy pointed this out at some point, but apparently Suikoden 2 was the first thrust of Yoshitaka Murayama writing a thing for Konami was apparently going to make an internally developed video game console, and Suikoden was going to be the RPG push on that, but then they shelved it, so...
Yeah, and the game they shelved was what became Suikoden 2.
Yeah, and
not Suikoden 1.
They wrote a prequel because they wanted to get a practice run in for Suikoden, and that was where Suikoden 1 came from, and you can kind of feel because it's really fucking boring because they're not actually interested in that game. But, on top of that, the thing they're basing the story off of is, like I said, a classical Chinese novel. All of that is based off of, an
folklore,
original...
basically.
It was based off folklore, but then folklore got taken into, Yuan era dynasty dramas, and they inflated it by tripling the amount of characters. So it's fanfic of a drama-inflated, folklore piece. It's just
let's start there briefly, because I went and actually looked up what the water margin, which is the way the novel's title is usually translated, is about. And it's the story of a group of outlaws who all end up taking refuge in the same place, and then they quarrel with the government, but then reach peace with the government and are sent off to do military type work for the government.
Mm-hmm.
And originally there were 36 of them, and through the 7 men and a dog syndrome, that became 108 characters, which is exactly 3 times as many. And then, it got kind of formalized into this novel in about the 13th or 14th century. It's regarded as one of the 4 great classics of Chinese literature, along with Journey to the West is another one, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And Konami picked it up in 1995 to make a video game about that has basically nothing to do with any of that, except for the character count.
Yeah, basically, the development is just okay, in the winter of 1993 and 94, that little gap, they were okay, we're probably going to make a console, so we need, a good RPG, because that's what everyone fucking does nowadays, RPGs, right? That's easy. And then they got 2 newbies to write a script, and then they shelved it for a year, and they were just oh shit, the PlayStation's coming out, we should make that. And then they wrote a prequel to that, and that's what Suikoden 1 was, and it's just
I guess so far without us saying that Suikoden 2 is extremely bad, you'd be thinking it's kind of an East of Eden deal where they're inspired by this great work of literature and pay homage to it, but that's not...
Yeah, no.
There is no measurable homage to the water margin in Suikoden 2, the video game.
Yeah, no.
It's just, we'll put 108 characters in.
And by the end of each of the games that I played, I'm the only one that played both Suikoden 1 and 2, you felt how much bloat there was.
Yeah.
And...
Well, So I didn't do a 108 star playthrough. I thought, I was tight on time. I thought it'd be interesting to have the contrast between the two. I took an hour less than you did.
Mm-hmm.
I think you used the guide slightly more heavily, and I had to do more grinding.
What was Devin's playtime?
30 something.
something.
I
have it on my How
in
Long to Beat.
Mine was a flat 40, so...
Really?
You're just kind of slower in general when consistently when we do games.
That's true, actually. Yeah, like I came in at 31, and I think Devin, you said that was an hour shorter.
No, my main plus extras playtime on fucking how long to beat is 30 hours 32 minutes. You actually took longer.
Jesus.
I can't efficiently do side stuff. I always forget where stuff is, and I don't know where I'm going.
I mean, I spent the entire game unsure where stuff was and not knowing where I was going because just every part of the design of this game is terrible, but we'll come on to that. Sorry, finish.
No, I don't think I have anything else to say.
So, if you haven't gathered from the last, minute of discussion, we don't like this game.
Yeah, we really don't like this game. I don't know, for me, it's the worst game I've played for the podcast. I don't know if you... Yeah?
Nah, I'm okay with that qualifier, actually.
Yeah.
Like Xenogears is surprisingly and astoundingly bad, but like to describe Xenogears again, it has some incredibly amazing moments, just hamstringed by some of the worst moments ever. And Suikoden 2 is just like a flat line of stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, I've been dwelling on this for the past few days, right? I'm in the middle of playing Final Fantasy 15, which is a colossal mess. And I've just started Exist Archive, which is Tri-Ace's Resonance of Fate for this generation, and so is a colossal mess. And Suikoden 2 is a colossal mess. And I can't tell why I love those other two games, but hated this one so much. Right, I have some ideas, but I think I'm really interested to see whether we can come to some serious insight about what the difference is between messy games that are messy in an endearing way and this crap.
Well, that's the thing that's gonna, at least in my opinion, if you strip away all the crap, which of course there's a lot of crap in Suikoden 2, I actually don't even see it as being that messy because it has its thing and it sticks to it the whole time, and that's actually kind of rare for an RPG.
Well,
and usually when they do it, I feel like they just tend to stick the landing with Suikoden 2.
What's Suikoden 2's thing then?
Conflict.
But what conflict?
I'll get to that when we get to the part where I'm like, here's what the game means, unless you need it right now.
Well, that.
I was okay. I guess I'll slightly reveal my metaphorical hand here. I was actually very frustrated with what this game was trying to say too. I feel like it said nothing, and I didn't see the point of it. And not to be sloppy and saying, well, that is the point, but I feel like the artistic statement of the game is after you defeat Luca Blight, which they hype is this horrible reason this war, had to go on for as long as it did, and you have to kill him. I feel like the game's artistic statement is that the war keeps going after Luca Blight dies, and that's the frustration or incomprehensibility of war and conflict. Which I hate this thesis, but that is the game's thesis.
Well, if that's the game's thesis, there's something to that because it works as an antithesis to great man history. Yeah, you can say, well, okay, World War II didn't end when Hitler died. It took months thereafter, and many of the
problem with that
of that war persist.
The problem with that is how much of the ludics and how the game resolves itself is still completely upholding great man of history thing.
Oh god, yeah. So I guess there's point one, is that this game has grand historical ambitions that it cannot get away from itself far enough to actually express.
And this is a trap that even really great novels, great RPGs, they fall into it a lot because that's just how that's just how we do folklore, myths, wars. It's by the great men who shape them. But I think for me it's most egregious, or I can't even say egregious today. Egregious because in the massive battles, the major battles, what are they called?
Major
battles, yeah.
The major battles. They give you control of your units basically that don't have any faces to them, they don't have names, and you can just let them die. And I purposely use them as decoys and stuff. And then they died. But you can't do the same for your stars because if you lose any stars, you can't get the good ending. And so it creates an instant dynamic where these people are important and their lives matter more than the poor villagers who don't matter, and you can just expend them as you will. And I was like, that's cool.
Yeah, it's like the whole focus on these individuals, even though like it's weird because every time you say here's a problem with the game, it's a problem from both sides. Yeah, because the problem is the overfocus on the individuals, but also if that makes it sound like it's developing their characters and stuff, and it just doesn't.
No, there are
So
no characters.
it's coming and going. Like, it focuses on these individuals, but they don't fucking exist.
So, for a bad essay, Ian Bogast, I think it was last year, wrote video games are better without characters, and it was
Oh god.
The
peak
one
game
about
studies.
being, like, how systems are
Yes.
the real things we should focus on.
Yes, it was peak game studies where the only uniquely expressive thing in video games is systems, and it is kind of unfortunately titled because what his argument is more that we should have more appreciation for systems games, even though they're like the main thing that's written about in academia. But we should have more appreciation for systems games and less for the dramas and the pop culture events, which, whatever, that's futile. That's shouting to an abyss, basically. But he can do that because he's notable. And
Yeah.
and I think
it was a peak think piece.
Yeah, it was. And I think Suikoden really is that game of systems in an RPG format because none of the characters or objects in the game exist in the fiction or the history. They just exist for their form and function. They exist to do the thing. Everything does a thing, and that's why it exists. And all these pieces interlock, and then you fight a war, and there's no reason why the war happens. There's no reason why the war needs to end. It's just so this like not perfect, this crappy system can like just happen. You're playing just a crappy system of history.
Yeah, I mean, like a charitable reading of that Bogost essay, and it's very charitable, but a charitable reading of that Bogost essay is he was saying, well, actually, video games need to use systems, which is the thing that video games are supposedly good at, to actually represent the systems of real life. Because I think the example he used was like SimCity.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, SimCity is great because it tries to represent the fact that human beings live in systems. And there's a really great campster, Chris Franklin, video about SimCity where he points out that actually SimCity is a really bad representation of how people exist in systems. But the charitable reading of Bogost is he's saying, well, maybe we should try to improve on that. Rather than worrying about individual storytelling and personal crap and all the, the uncharitable reading of it is it's a repeat of Frank Lance's letter to Lee that's all about sneering about walking simulators. But like, you can say, well, actually, maybe what's needed is to improve the way that we use systems to represent that stuff. And it's possible to see Suikoden as trying to do that, but also it fails utterly. Because it fails at everything.
It has terrible systems.
You can be charitable any way you want about this game, and you still wind up with cataclysmic failure.
I think another, when I finished the game, my first thought was like, I honestly, I have a hard time. This sounds weird, but I have a hard time saying the execution's bad with Suikoden, and to finish that thought, it's just because all the ideas are bad to begin with. Every single idea at its conception shouldn't have been put in the game. So the execution, I don't even think you can mess it up. It doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, it gets to the point where there's no, like, actually executing on this could only have been bad because the ideas were so bad. It's like, executing on the idea of unleashing a plague. Just be as bad at unleashing a plague as you can be, please.
Can you track 108 characters in any work of fiction at all? Is it possible? You'd need a lot more hours than 40, which no one has more than 40 hours to begin with.
Well, I have a friend who's tried to read Romance of the Three Kingdoms, which is another one of the 4 great Chinese novels.
Oh, God.
And, that's got hundreds of characters. I mean, I have read some very long, complicated fantasy epics.
Do they have 108 characters, though?
I bet you'd find 108 named characters in like the Wheel of Time.
I guess
but also that's like 5 million words, and at least half of them are wasted.
Yeah, basically, like, if Suikoden is a cake, someone forgot to check the expiration date on all the ingredients. And somehow they still, like, people still ate it and were like, yeah, this is good. And that's fucked up.
Here's the thing, right? The cachet that this game has into like the best RPG of all time, it is the least understandable I have ever found the hype about a game to be.
It's this game isn't even this game is very, very not representative of JRPGs. And if I'm going to go in my deep theory of why Westerners like it so much, it's because it's a giant toy box where you can do things randomly and then random things happen without correlation. And for some reason, in the West, we love that. We love just doing random things in an open world, especially in a fantasy setting, and those random things appear to have greater meaning in the fiction, and that's just what we love. That's why Bethesda is the greatest. Well, that's why we write about Bethesda games 100 times over. And Suikoden is the PlayStation, not the same equivalent, but it's like the same.
It's got that same flavor.
Yeah, it's behind. There's that's behind it.
I guess I'm used to thinking of that as being like it only really works for Western gamers if it actually works to entail a world, to make a world feel like, to make the virtual world feel equivalent to the real world.
It's like all the immersive sim think piece crap.
Yeah, but like Suikoden 2 doesn't manage that either because it's too solipsistic. Things only happen immediately on top of you, and when your actions do have knock-on effects, they're so absurd that it doesn't set the usual relations of cause and effect that kind of impression relies upon. Sorry, go on.
I can go forward with that, but if you have a little bit more.
I'm not sure I do. Go ahead.
Okay, so like the first act of Suikoden 2 is decent to good. It has that like pulse and drive that a lot of intros to JRPGs have. Like, here's the conflict, here's some twists really fast, here are the major players. It moves at a good pace, and I enjoyed it. And I think the where the game falls into a rut and immediately shows how consistently bad it is once you get your castle, the game comes not just slow but like completely incompetent, and it's a Fiction 101 problem. There's literally no motivations written for anybody ever. Besides Joey and Nanami, there's no reason for any of the characters to be around you. You go around, you like do this very laborious process of asking every city-state for an alliance without knowing why the cities exist in the first place or why they join you in the conflict. Except, I mean, you know they're doing it for survival, but you don't know like why. You don't know what they have at stake. You don't know there is no worlds in Suikoden 2. That's what I meant too when it's like the writing seems like horribly informed by video game systems, because all these places just exist as form and function only to bolster like this conception of an epic video game without having any meaning to them.
Yeah, so I guess it appeals to a politics, right? It says, like, here are these two nations, and one of them is a unified monarchy, and one of them is this loose South European-style confederacy of different competing interests that can't get on. And the reason that the monarchy works is because it's unified, but like it's fascistic, and fascism is good at one thing, which is winning wars. And then the game doesn't really have an answer for that. It's just like, well, magical charisma will get these people to put aside their differences, and it'll all be a fairy story. So I guess that's the broadest problem. But like, so the opening salvo, which I think is where the game works, I agree with you, I think is where the game works best. It starts off and you're a youth brigade soldier in the bad nation's army, and there's just been a peace treaty, and then you are a witness to your side dishonestly breaking the treaty, and you become a fugitive. And you become a fugitive fleeing ahead of the advance of your army. And over the course of trying to find refuge in a sequence of places, it becomes less and less important that you are recaptured and that the secrets that you know are kept. It's never really clear why it would matter to anybody if your voice was heard. Like,
it's actually, I think it actually goes out its way to say it doesn't really matter because no one believes you at all once you're back at Highland.
Yeah, well, like there's this one hint where, so the bad guy at that point is the Prince of Highland, and he has a sister, and the sister passes, like, you're in captivity and you're on your way to be executed, and the sister passes by in a coach, the princess, and one or other of the characters tries to shout the explanation to her.
Well, Rio tries to shout what's going on, and then Joey like looks her straight in the face and says, "This country has failed me, and all youths like me," or something like that. And that was like one of the only good lines in the game.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, but then like that hint, that could there is just a story archetype that works like that, where you would go on to escape from captivity and try to link up with the good royal in the evil fascist kingdom to overthrow the evil fascist king and replace it with a good monarch who would be just. That's a fantasy archetype. But after that point, it's clear that your secrets aren't actually relevant at all. And you slowly go from being a fugitive to being a refugee. And the game's, for me, the most effective moment in the game is like after the last town on that first continent has fallen and you barely escape. There's a scene with you and your sister and this
when you're sitting on the tree,
child
right?
that you've adopted, where you're sitting by a tree with nowhere to go and no home behind you, really.
I'd like to say I also really love the visual choices in a lot of those early parts, like that scene too, where it's just a full CG. The whole screen's dedicated to Ryo and Nanami at this tree. Wild Arms 2 uses a lot of these, a lot more than Suikoden 2 does, and to better effect, but it's still like, it's just very smart to cut out like some of the UI trappings and just like, here's our painted cutscene, basically, more or less.
Yeah, like, it works well there. Some of the later ones...
I can't even remember the later ones.
The paintings aren't even, like, visually competent. They're basic perspective mistakes.
The other good one would be when Ryo and Nanami are waiting for Joey.
Yes, that's it, which is... Is that later? I thought it was... No, it's before that, because when you get to the tree,
before that.
Joey's left already.
Yeah.
Because...
They're back to back, actually.
They're either side of Joey killing the mayor of that town and causing it to fall.
Yeah.
For no fucking reason. Because we haven't...
There's a stupid reason, but he says at the very extremely end of the game that he actually somewhat admired Luca Blight for his power and for his ability to, make the world in his image, and he wanted to do that, and that's just what he finally decided to do.
God.
It's all internal, though. Oh, you didn't see the true ending, did you?
No, I didn't see the true ending.
Yeah, the true ending is awful.
That's only told to you if you do all the random bullshit.
God. So, I mean, we've been talking about the war. We haven't really talked about the character story, such as it is. There are two basic fantasy plots, right? There's a war, or there's I've got to fight my childhood friend. Yeah. And Suikoden starts off like it's going to be a war, but then while you're on the run, just you and Joey and your sister, and I think Pilika by that point, you go into a cave for no reason, and at the back of the cave is a shrine, and you go up to the shrine, and a goddess appears, and she goes, right, and again, for no reason, here, you take the black and red sword rune, and you take the blue and gold shield rune, for some reason.
Also, Leknot isn't a goddess, she's just a really powerful mage.
Is she really? Well, that's how Lord of the Ring gods are explained, though. It's like the same in fantasy universes.
Yeah, no, she's quote-unquote the keeper of balance, and she just has one of the gate rings.
Oh my god. Right, so this is a slightly roundabout...
That's like effectively a goddess.
No, but no, she's in the first game, and she's just like, oh, hey, you're gonna be involved in some shit, and then her sister, her twin sister, who has the other half of the gate rune, is the big actual bad of Suikoden 1. So, the problem is, true rune holders are immortal, but that doesn't mean, they're all, super effective political and world powers. She's just old as shit.
I guess that's just a Suikoden 1 connection that's not explained very well at all.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing in this game about what Leknat is at all. But, I want to share a kind of slightly roundabout anecdote, because it applies so perfectly to this game that I cannot actually believe it happened. A standard piece of fantasy writing advice when it comes to world building, obviously everything has to have a good reason. And the example that I have seen used in multiple different places is balance as a concept. Right? The idea, there must be balance. Yeah? The standard example is, as a plot summary, well, you killed the big bad, and that set everything out of balance because there must be bad to balance the good. So now you must go and restore badness to the world because that's good. Yeah, this is a ridiculous example that genuinely happens all the time in people's first fantasy novels. And that's actually the plot of Suikoden 2, basically, is the goddess or the mage or whatever of balance shows up and goes, right, you're the good one, you're the bad one, go forth. And that's
like,
the inciting incident for the final plot.
And it's like, you have to... You go into separate rooms, like, you're not going to be able to tell each other what's going on, but it's like, no, you come out and you're just like, yeah, I got a shield, what'd you get? It's just like, come on.
Oh, I got this charred black sword.
I got this thing that looks like it's bleeding.
Sword. It's the most obviously evil sword in history.
I can cast this spell called Hungry Friend now? Fuck.
So, like, in other words, Suikoden 2 goes into, like, great pains to make it seem like war is not, like, natural causes, but it also could be fatalistic or, like, your destiny, which is also just really stupid. It's just, like, I don't know why you want to make it unclear if this war was or was not meant to, like, had to happen or not. That's just, like, not interesting little subtext going on there.
I want to talk about Suikoden 1 because the Suikoden 1 plot is a lot simpler and a lot, like, better because it's not trying to be complex. Basically, the plot of Suikoden 1 is you're the son of a famous general and you get your first day on the job in the Empire, and it turns out the Empire is corrupt as shit and you get turned into a fugitive because you're friends with this guy named Ted who has the Soul Eater rune, which is crazy powerful, and when Windy wants it, Leknot's sister, Windy, wants it, and then she's just like, get that fucker, and then you have to go on the run from the Empire, and you're just like, oh, the Empire's kind of corrupt, let's fucking seek, like, refuge, and you end up joining Odessa, which is the rebel movement, and then the actual leader, Odessa, dies, and you get to take up the revolution in her place. The thing with...
hang on. That's in the water margin novel.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The thing about the Soul Eater rune is that you only... It's like it's kind of like the Black Sword rune. I think it's actually called... there's some translation shit.
Right,
but, like, the Soul Eater rune in Suikoden 1 gets a new level of magic every time someone close to the protagonist dies. It literally eats their soul. So, like... And your friend Ted, who dies, was wandering around for 300 years. You eventually go back in time to see his village, and he's like a little kid, but then he spends 300 years wandering around, and you ended up being his only friend because of destiny or whatever. But, like, it's just, like, this really basic and confident story about, like, oh yeah, this empire is kind of fucked up, and the new emperor is, like, doing really bad shit, and we're gonna take him down, and you end up converting, in the 108 star route anyway, you end up converting all of his generals, and then you assault the castle that you started the game at, and you fight this guy, and he's just like, yeah, Windy was, like, controlling all the generals with one of her runes, and then he's just like, yeah, no, I'm actually immune to that. I was just doing this because I really loved Windy, and then he suicides with her. And that's the end of the game. And it's just like...
Right. You had me up until, like, he suicides with her. That sounds like such a better game.
Like, he's just like, yeah, she's evil as hell, and obviously, like, we can't sustain this anymore. You've cleared out all our troops. We can't do anything. So I might as well take all the evil person with me when I go. And then the game's over, and I think it's the Tauran Republic is founded.
Yeah.
But yeah.
That game, the reason that game sounds a lot better is because it just lets it's a really dumb system, so it just lets them be a system, and then you do the thing. It's not trying to cross the lines of this huge war drama is also my rivalry with my childhood friend.
Yeah. Well, and there is a third element, because there's the Beast Rune in Suikoden 2 as well. Which, like, at first, like, when you first encounter anything about the Beast Rune, it looks like it's a magic power that Luca Blight, the initial bad guy, is accumulating to, like, bolster his attack. But as the game progresses, it turns out actually it's more like the Beast Rune is controlling him and is kind of controlling the nation of Highland, because Joey comes under its influence as well once he becomes King of Highland. Which, God... You can't talk about any one thing with this game because there's always something else terrible. I didn't even
realize that. That's so stupid.
Yeah, like there's a scene.
That's another way it just becomes fatalistic because the beast it's the Beast Rune's fault that we're all blood hungry, passed down through generations from this mysterious stuff we don't even know about, which is because nothing's told you in the stupid game.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Like, it's the Final Fantasy Tactics problem, this one, is that eventually it's all just Satan. all these complicated political plots, and eventually, no, it's all just Satan. Just go kill Satan,
And
fine.
And in this, it's even worse, because it's not like... In Final Fantasy Tactics, Satan was kind of an adjacent problem, but Satan is literally responsible for the entirety of, like, the nation's ills in Suikoden 2. It's just like, nope, people aren't bad, Satan.
Yep.
Which is also, like, the most comical caricature of fucking the losing side and the bad side in a fucking war story. Is just like, oh yeah, actually, they're sacrificing their queen to... not actually, but Satan. They're sacrificing their queen to Satan to raise morale. And it's just like, holy fuck. Even if it ended up being a fake, like, body doll, just like, holy shit, why was that a morale boost?
Tactics also had, like, lore and world building to why Satan could even get power again, and Suikoden 2 is completely absent of that. It's just, they have this rune, they've had it, and that's it.
Well, the Beast Rune is supposed to be one of the 27 true runes.
Right, but I don't know what that means.
Yeah, like that was the next thing I was going to say, is they keep going on about these 27 true runes, and obviously there's also the 108 Stars of Destiny, and those are just these two random numbers that some idiot pulled out of a hat and said, we're going to have 27 of this thing and 108 of those, and it's not going to matter. You're never going to encounter all 27 true runes. You have to collect the 108 stars, but there's no reason that there are 108 stars, and they're called the 108 Stars of Destiny, but there is no destiny.
Also, I'm
contingent on that.
I'm seriously laughing because Suikoden Tierkreis, which is the DS, not really a Suikoden game, the bad guys in that are a cult of fatalists, and like you have to gather 108 heroes to go defeat them and prove that destiny isn't like predetermined. It's just like no wonder people didn't like this.
That sentence contradicts itself like twice.
Yes, I
That's
know.
Incredible.
I want to play it.
We have a binary valued logic, and you've just managed to get 3 truth values into one sentence thanks to a bad spin-off of a terrible video game.
I'm actually interested in playing it because it's just like, oh, this isn't like Suikoden. Like, people who like Suikoden don't like this. Maybe I'll give it a shot. Which is, like, always the most helpful and healthy response to a video game. I'm going to play the opposite of this right now.
I want to play the opposite of Suikoden too, that's for sure. Oh, God.
I want to talk about why I hate the game's alleged thesis now, too, as,
Go for it.
I said it was like the incomprehensibility of conflict, and so let's say Nanami is the focal point of that, because she's always wondering why this war needs to happen, and she's there wondering why this game's still going, and she's...
I identified with Nanami a lot.
But, like, Nanami is great. She's the only character in the game, and she also gets removed from the game because this game can't have any characters. It's just not a very... Her statements are the only statements of intent, and they're not very strong. I just feel like a little kid going like, yeah, why do these things happen? I don't know. Because, like, since there's no reason for this war to happen, and the game never gives you a reason, then Suikoden 2 is saying wars don't happen for any reason. They just happen. So they're natural disasters. And... So like when you go to the peace talks, then Joey's like, yeah, actually this isn't peace. It's unconditional surrender or we kill you. And I was, when I played that part, I was just like, why? Why is he doing this? And it's never stated why. Like, I can assume reasons from subtext, but I don't. It could be anything. I don't know why Highland needs to take over all of the city-state, and I don't know why they can't just be like, all right, let's have a ceasefire. Luca Blight's dead. I mean, except for maybe the Beast Rune.
Well, that's it. Like,
yeah.
I mean, you say, well, Suikoden kind of paints war as this kind of natural disaster, but it also makes war a natural disaster because there's this force of nature, the Beast Rune, that has driven an entire nation to like irrepressible violence, and that's a really, really dangerous way of representing.
It's horrible.
Fascist
it's horrible.
nations.
That's what I was thinking. I realized the artistic statement is actually closer to sometimes people are naturally incompatible, and only through subjugation can you achieve peace. Which that is just fascism, ladies and gentlemen. That's just junk. That's like Hobbes. Everyone's terrible, and we need a king.
Yep.
I think like the most I could possibly read into like why Joey continues the war is just like, I'm gonna push that friend of mine to be the best he could be, and it's just like, even that's just dumb as shit, and I don't accept it as a reasonable read of this text. It's just
Yeah, no, it's not. Like, I mean, Joey's motivations don't make any sense at all, at any point, and to the extent that the game constantly misleads you that he has motivations. Yeah, like anything that you think is a motivation that Joey has just isn't, unless you think of him as kind of intrinsically the same character as Luca Blight, and just you and Nanami have spent your entire childhoods misreading him. You have to read Joey as literally having deceived everyone he's ever known from birth.
That's also basically what Suikoden 2 says too. It's like, yeah, that's actually what happened.
Yeah.
Well, it's more. I guess the whole read is that he was deeply conflicted about his birthright as a noble, even though he wasn't even treated properly because he's a bastard child. I think was in the story, and
There's something, yeah.
something like that. He's illegitimate or whatever, and his dad never loved him, but he still wanted to be part of the Highland in some capacity, and he still wanted to own up to that, but he was like really conflicted with his ties to Ryu and his ties to Highland, and he chooses to be Luca Blight. Which is like, whoa!
Yeah, so like, there's kind of three elements to this story, I guess. There's what he actually does during the game. There's what he does in the true ending, which you've seen, and there's what he does in the normal ending, which I've seen. Because in the normal ending, when you finally win, you conquer the castle and you defeat the beast Rune, you get to the throne room of the castle, and Joey isn't there. His coat is lying over the back of the throne, but he's gone. And at the end of the credits, there is a single still of him sitting by the river, from the start of the game, kind of gazing off into the distance, with the implication that like he's just fucked off to have the life of an anonymous wanderer. So he didn't even give a shit about any of this anyway.
The true end is that Rue and Joey both fuck off. So
yeah.
I think all that part of the normal ending is just communicating to the player, because this game's always just all its dumb bouncy systems. So it's just, hey, Joey's over here, so reload your file and go over here and you can meet him, and that's actually literally what you can do.
if you have 108
really?
stars.
No, even if you
All right.
don't, you can just kill him.
No, well, yeah, that's an option, but like the true ending is when you refuse to attack.
You can't not kill him, but you can still go there and kill him. I think, even if you don't have all the stars.
Good grief.
But yeah,
I don't know what happens if you kill him. I was gonna look at all the endings, but then I was just like, you know what? Actually, I don't care.
The thing is, you just go back to leading the country, and it's just like, okay, whatever, you fucked up. Try again, asshole.
Yeah, it doesn't treat any of its endings with any amount of respect either. Just like, dude, why'd you make all these endings if you don't care about them? They're just all like bait for the true ending, which is stupid.
There's a lot of that kind of checklist design thing, I think, that we talked about with Ni no Kuni. Like, an RPG's got to have multiple endings, and it's got to have big national war plots, and it's got to have a demon god as the final boss.
Regardless of how that fits with the tone, because it's a JRPG. Ugh.
Well, I mean, the tone in this game are not in the same room.
For all the ranting about like the plot stuff, I forgot to say just how dreadfully fucking boring it is as an RPG.
Yeah.
Playing it.
Well, like I figured we'd kind of wrap up plot stuff and then go on to talk about this. Normally we just get angry about the systems for half an hour first and then talk about plot, but it's just we haven't even got to systems yet because we're too mad about the plot. But the systems are just as fucking bad.
I was gonna say that like the plot probably would have made a lot more sense if Luca Blight was the actual final boss and they plotted around having Joey be his right-hand man and trying to do this fucked up fascist patriotic role out of some misguided idealism, but they don't.
Weirdly, the game would be even more boring if it was Luca Blight at the end, but also I probably would say it's okay.
Yeah.
I think it'd be somewhat less harmful, because at least then it'd be saying, well, actually, clearly what you have to do is fight fascism. Yeah, fight fascism, and fascism can, at least in some way, be beaten with appropriate resistance.
I mean, it would just be Star Wars.
You can fight fascism all you want, but it will never go away.
Yeah.
because it'll just pass to the next generation.
Because fascism is born of something greater than humanity. And it's like, no, it's literally the worst of humanity, and that's why we need to fight it as humans. Holy shit. This is very basic shit. And this isn't even getting into, like, all the terrible characters that show up. Like, holy shit. Oh.
I will turn face and say there's one part of the game I liked, even at the end. This is going to sound weird, too, because this is the best part of the game execution-wise, even though it's the worst part of the game structurally, and it's when you fight the Necrolord. Because there's no reason for you to fight the Necrolord at all, except maybe to appease the fans of the first game. It's like the worst connective tissue between the two games. But how in this arc, how the players are introduced is like they actually have motivation, and their personal histories color the fiction in a larger history with the Necrolord, and they frame the actual conflict with the Necrolord as something that happened like organically. It's like the only war and conflict that's treated within your respect is the battle with a vampire that happens for like 3 hours.
Well, you can like there are things to be said for this, right? On the one hand, it shows that wars are never simply two sides, right? A broad war creates opportunities for smaller wars to flourish.
Yeah.
Necrolord is able to do what he is because there's no unified opposition, because everybody's at each other's throats trying to deal with Highland. And another important thing, which is a more kind of allegorical thing, is that when Necrolord is undead, and he's an army of the undead, a lot of those about in war. So you can say, well, actually, there is a problem too with kind of the consequences of war producing all the effects of corruption and decay.
Necrolord's a profiteer off of it, basically.
He's a war profiteer, but also, like, a lot of what is harmful about war is the breakdown of infrastructure.
Yeah.
And Necrolord, and kind of the undead are an indication of that in a lot of ways, just symbolically. So this idea that... So you first meet Necrolord, and he's in the castle that he takes over in the first game.
No.
No?
No.
No, he's in Victor's hometown, basically.
Well, okay, it's not in the first game, but it's prior to the first game or something.
Yes.
The part of the backstory is that it's Victor's hometown. Necrolord took it from Victor at some point in the past. And you kind of... Do you go there at Victor's request?
No, you go there at Freedy's request, because the people in South... Don't remember the South Window. There's like reports of girls going missing, and they want you to investigate before you can strike an alliance, basically.
Yeah.
Because you have to do something random before you can strike your alliance.
Yeah, well, it is a JRPG.
Yeah.
Well, it is an RPG. It's not just Japanese RPGs that do that. But you displace him, right? And you... this place where this vampire has been relatively harmlessly contained for a while. You displace him, and then he shows up later in a remote corner of the world, taking it over with a massive army that has grown through the war, and like that's the one bit of vaguely world-like consequence that happens in the game.
It feels like it's from a different game, honestly.
It really does. But in a different game, that would be a really, really good B-plot for like Act 2 of a war plot video game.
Yeah.
It's just it doesn't work in this game because
if Suikoden 2 even went with Luca Blightstead, now here's the consequences of the war as things break down around you, and not Joey becomes Luca Blight, that'd be pretty cool too.
That would all, yeah. I mean, like everything this game does, it's very easy to see a better version of.
I would be shocked and maybe a little frustrated if the city-state broke down and the next war was between your allies, but that actually would have been cool because that happens in war sometimes. People see an opportunity.
Suikoden 3 starts with communities that make up what replaces the city-state kind of at each other's throats. So it's kind of dealing with that, I think.
And also, there are 3 stories that you play all of, and it's just like, maybe that's interesting. I'm never going to touch it, because Jesus. These 2 games were not a good first impression.
Yeah.
Suikoden 2 is lobbied around as the greatest JRPG of all time when it's given to people like, you should play this. This is the greatest JRPG of all time. When this really should have like caveats like Chrono Cross, Final Fantasy VIII, it should have a lot of caveats. You should say, I like this game for these weird reasons, and you should try it for those weird reasons. I don't understand how it's being passed around like you will immediately like this game.
Because people are idiots.
I mean,
Fuck Jason
even,
Schreier. I'm just going to say that right now. Fuck Jason Schreier. There's a piece he wrote on Kotaku and then reposted on Kotaku like 8 months later because he likes Suikoden 2. And it's titled Why You Should Play Suikoden 2, one of the best RPGs ever made. And it's full of bullshit. I'm mad.
I would never have guessed. But, like, shit, I had something I was going to say, and you've been too entertaining and I've forgotten it. Now, just surface things, right? Like, before we dig in deep into the systems and why it's also not a functional RPG, surface stuff. The localization is terrible.
It's worse than... It's not like Wild Arms too bad, but it's worse than Xenogears, it's worse than Final Fantasy VII, it's worse than the average, it's way below par.
And it broke technical things.
Well, like, it's just at the dialogue level, right? This is a localization. There aren't many massive, obvious glaring translation errors. There are a few, like the way Joey's name has been localized. But the dialogue is incredibly wooden, and the dialogue writer's idea of drama is to add more exclamation marks. I want somebody to get the script for this game and run a count of how many exclamation marks there are. Because there are
choices
passages where there's 5 per sentence.
Yeah, there's times where when you get to make choices as Rio, your options have like 10 exclamation marks. I didn't even really notice, but that's true.
Yeah, I took 2 screen caps, and it was Luca Blight's fucking death speech, and like 2 text boxes had like fucking 70 fucking exclamation marks. It was just like, please stop.
Yeah,
we're in Final Fantasy V fan translation territory.
Ugh.
Yeah, so the dialogue is really wooden, which almost every scene is bled of any drama it might have, just by the text execution. It's got loads of dialogue choices, which are almost always disguised, do you want to proceed now or not? But it's not, it's seldom obvious which option is go on and which one is stop.
They also fail to characterize Rio as anything at all. He honestly shouldn't get any dialogue options because he behaves like every silent protagonist ever.
The whole story turns on his ability to recruit people and unify disparate feuding factions into an army that can stand up to the Nazis. And he can't. There's nothing in this game at all to suggest that he has that kind of charisma. And it's the most alienating thing when other characters go, oh, you're so charismatic and you've unified these people.
Also, I'm crushing on you because that's my character trait.
There is a character whose character trait is crushing on the hero. Yes.
We know the point is the hero is you. It's supposed to be a cipher, and so that's the whole connection going on. I agree it's alienating.
But you can't actually get into the character at all because there's nothing there.
I agree it's alienating because no one ever comes up to me and says, wow, you're so attractive and charismatic.
Oh, come on.
Even if people were saying that to me all the time, it would still not be possible to identify with Ryu in this game.
I'm just doing a bit.
But
yeah, it's part of the artifact of like people think blank slate or silent protagonists are easier to get into, but like I have literally never identified with a video game protagonist except for Luc von Faber, whose entire thing is being like really fucked up and depressed. So like, what? No.
I will say silent protagonists are actually extremely hard to utilize unless you're going to excise most of the drama and story. Unless we're playing Final Fantasy 1 here, it's not easy. It's not the easiest to get into. It's the opposite. You need to be really cognizant of setting and everything. Like I'm pretty sure the batter in Off, is he silent or is he not?
He's not silent.
Oh, he's not silent.
It's really complicated with Off because like the batter communicates directly with the player sometimes. And I can't remember whether he does that through speech at all.
Well,
but also Off tells you repeatedly you have taken on the role of the batter. So it's really clear that the player is a character in Off as well as the batter.
I think Earthbound does that too because it asks for the player's name.
Yeah, and Earthbound is actually decent utilization of silent protagonists, but it's also a Dragon Quest clone, so that's why it works.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll say Yumi Nikki's a game of complete silence and resembles an RPG, but it's obvious that Yumi Nikki is a character that speaks, just not in the game at all. And it still works, but like it's an incredibly difficult surreal piece, and that's why it works. It's not gonna you can't transplant that kind of expression into a war drama that needs to have characters who fulfill like roles. I guess I think Rune is nothing. He is just a nothing.
It's like it's basically pitting like a void of character against like the theory of like history is made of great men. Because like, okay, it's Luca Blight and then Joey Blight, who even takes on Luca's fucking last name because he marries his sister, just like gets ever closer to being Luca Blight again, versus the void of character Rio fucking what's his face.
At the risk of sounding like a broken record, all of this is a great fucking argument for Varn in FF12, right? Because Varn in FF12 is playing the role that a silent protagonist is supposed to play in a fantasy war story, where it gives you, like, it sets your perspective within the story. That's the actual function of a silent protagonist, or of a protagonist generally, is to set the reader's perspective within the story. And that's what Varn exists to do. But Varn isn't a silent protagonist. He's not a very interesting character in and of himself, because he's just a relatively boring adolescent teen boy. But
it's kind of like what the role Nanami plays, which would have been a way better lead than Ryo.
God, yeah. FF12 is one of the few war story JRPGs I've played that I think actually does justice to it, and I think part of the reason it does justice to it is because it manages to get you into a character who is humble relative to the events of the war, of humble station relative to the events of the war.
Last Remnant's conflict is really pointless and boring, but it at least is head and shoulders above with tactics and Suikoden, so that's true too. That's honorable mention.
Yeah. Anyway, we kind of got onto a big digression there, and I was listing off surface stuff that's a problem with the game. And I had one other thing, which is that visually, this is the blandest game I've ever played. It's incredibly drab.
I'm of two minds of that. I think, on a design sense, the towns are actually fantastic.
Really?
Yeah. They're indicative of the geography always. They always communicate like something about the town's culture. I mean, they're very boring to traverse because none of the NPCs ever have anything interesting to say. But
that's definitely true.
But I mean, they're always used varied materials. They're always in like complicated arrangements that like communicate something, which that doesn't happen in any of the dungeons of the game.
I don't know. Like
they reminded me of Tales of Phantasia's towns, which are also a really good landmark of these are good towns.
Yeah, I guess the problem I have with the towns is that they're really hard to read where you can actually move to a lot of the time.
I think that's environment design in general in this game.
That's at least, it's not like Xenogears level in my opinion, but that's a thing.
Yeah, like the Xenogears towns are bad.
But I mean, on some level, towns are also just like that in real life. That's a cheap answer, but some of my favorite towns, you get lost in them instantly in games, so that's actually, like, from a usability standpoint, I mean, absolutely. But another thing is, from a usability standpoint, you don't need to use towns in Suikoden either, because you have your castle, so, I don't know.
Well, you need to use them a bit, because until you recruit everybody, you need
yeah, that's true.
A blacksmith, and you need a runesmith, and then an armor shop, and so on, until you recruit
once
those
you
people.
Can warp, though, you can go to the easy-to-access places, too, but it happens so late, it's so frustrating.
Yeah, but, like, definitely the dungeons are terrible.
Oh, they're terrible. The last time I've had to say the dungeons are terrible was Trails in the Sky, and these ones are worse.
They're a lot worse. But, like, well, actually, before I get onto the dungeons, the world map is, like, there's one area that doesn't look exactly the same as all the other areas. There's one grass texture, there's one tree, there's 2 road surfaces total, there's one kind of gravelly texture, there's one mountain. Just repeated endlessly. The sea, instead of actually putting like a wave texture on it or anything, they put mountains visible as like underwater mountains.
I was laughing at the sea at some points because sometimes it just looks like you're on a floating continent instead of there being water there. It looks like just
it doesn't look like
a vast
water
expanse
at all.
Of air.
Ah, God, it's so bad.
I honestly like, not the character designs, they suck, but I like how characters are animated in battle. I like that a lot. And I found that actually...
Yeah, it's got a little bit of the Breath of Fire 2.
It's actually extremely like Breath of Fire 3 and 4 if we ever play them, but it's a very conservative animation, but it's very fluid at the same time.
Yeah. Some of the enemy sprite work, like particularly some bosses, is really good.
the
Sometimes.
abomination, the giant skull monster, which was supposed to be a hackathon was alright.
The bosses are also really boring, though, like a bone dragon.
Yeah.
Simplex
the bone
it.
dragon is... The bone dragon is like... It reminded me of Yoshi's story on the N64, actually, because there's a bone dragon in that, and it's got a similar cartoony vibe. It didn't look at all in place, but it was a pretty good sprite in and of itself. But yeah, so the world map's bad. The battle arenas are pretty drab.
Yeah.
Like these really awkward 3D rendered, like super primitive 3D environments with the 2D sprites in.
I can't defend the dungeons on any notion of any level, because they shouldn't be in the game. They honestly should just not be in the game. Just, I don't know, do something else, because they obviously didn't care about making them. They're just flat stretches of rectangle pasted here. This one's pasted up, this one's pasted left, this one's pasted up, this one's pasted left, usually with all, like 50% of them are with trees, dude. The same trees, always the same spread of trees.
Yep.
And
you spent that there are miles and miles and miles of identical forest paths in this game.
And like, if I liked the game, possibly my I wouldn't do this because I love environment design in RPGs, but I would say they're going for a naturalistic feel. And you know, when you're doing real life war, you're traveling through drab, boring places most of the time. But that's like, I already feel
that's too charitable.
Yeah, I already feel bad saying that, because there was no conscious thought put into these places, and even the most drab, boring places, there's always something to them, right? There's a landmark will appear. Something happens. It's not as boring as Suikoden 2. Suikoden 2 is impossibly boring. The trees don't
even change color.
No,
it's literally exactly the same tree. I can't stress that enough.
It's a maze of trees every single time. The same tree. The same maze. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you'll travel through the same maze of trees like 3 or 4 times, the exact same one, even though there's 10 others that feel the same, but you have to do the literal same one and Green Hill like 3 times in the story. And that's
both ways.
And very lazy.
The one attempt they make at any kind of visual flourish is that there are occasional areas which, instead of being a top-down, are supposed to be side-on, but they use the exact same sprites. The skyboxes are really badly composed, usually, like, particularly when you're going to Tinto, you go over this mountain pass, right? God. And that's a vertical area, and they do it as side-scrolling for some reason. And, like, the skybox has been positioned so that all the clouds are below the horizon most of the time. So half the screen is just this expanse of grey-blue. And it's like, that's not how you do the thing.
I honestly believe I could hand RPG Maker to someone who's never made a game before, and they'd make better levels than Suikoden 2 did.
Yeah, well, that's kind of a credit to how sophisticated RPG Maker is as a tool these days. But like the other thing is, a few of the side-on areas have scrolling backgrounds to give depth, but the scrolling is set up badly, so it breaks the perspective, and all the angles are wrong. It's just, the level of visual incompetence is a high school art class. It's incredibly bad, and it's baffling to me that like a professional artist produced this. I don't want to be...
Professional is really loose too, though, at 90s game dev still.
Yeah.
Game dev in the 90s was made up of rejects, and sometimes it's endearing, but Suikoden doesn't need any more of that kind of a feel going on.
Oh god. Yeah, I mean, it like, I keep finding myself slipping towards, well, Konami should have known better, which is not a helpful attitude. But I think they
just didn't care. They didn't care.
It really feels like that, because this game, I mean, we were on stream, we worked it out a few days back. This game is almost 2 years after FF7. And, like, say what you like about FF7, that game has some spectacular visual composition. Like, the camera work's great, the environment design is great, the use of background is really clever. And none of that, 2 years on, has translated into Suikoden 2. And, like, nowadays...
Suikoden 2 is even worse than that, because this is at a point... I mean, this is after Super Nintendo. Final Fantasy IV came out and tried. Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger came out, which... whatever, I've complained about those games, but visually they are incredible. They are super strong. Tales of Phantasia, visually incredibly strong on the Super Nintendo. And Suikoden 2 comes out and acts like those games never even happened. It's like, this is like the RPG you'd make after you played an NES game. It's like, whoa, how do I make a little more? How do I add a little more depth to these, very constrained because there's not a lot of space in the cart? How do I make these bigger? But it still feels like those very bad dungeons, except it's even worse because there's no change of color. Oh, whatever.
The fuckiest thing for me with this game was I found myself hankering for Wild Arms 1.
I mean, yeah.
Because Wild Arms looks better.
I was sitting here like, you know what? Wild Arms, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Pretty much. And Xenogears 2. Like, Xenogears has some fucking great scenes in it. And the best Suikoden 2 can manage is the FMV where the Stone Golem, alright? Like when you go to actually fight
the Stone
Luke
Golem.
and Blight, the Stone Golem pops up.
Besides the Necklord, I like 2 scenes, and I said one of them. It's where Joey looks straight in the eyes of the princess. And this is really mean to her, because you gotta be really mean to the girls in Suikoden 2, for no reason.
Because the developers were.
But it was still some good lines. And then the other time was when Shu talks to Leon Silverberg, that's his dumb name, and they trade their philosophies of why they're strategists. It's just it's a very weird conversation for like the kinds of characters I wouldn't normally see or wouldn't normally hear from. And it had more to say about this game or the war than anyone ever did in the entire game. And then of course nothing like that happens again.
God, I didn't really grok anything to do with the strategist. So just to back up a bit, there's a legendary strategist, and you you encounter one of his pupils who introduces you to her friend who is also a pupil who is better than her because she's female and he's male, and he's got a feud with another one of their students who becomes the tactician for like Luca and Joey.
Devin is Leon the tactician from Suikoden 1.
No, Matthew, the legendary one.
Oh, it's the legendary one.
Yeah.
I felt like there's definitely a connection going on.
I'm trying to figure. Like, I think Leon.
The Silverbergs helped.
Yeah.
The Silverbergs helped the Torn Empire, didn't they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Matthew Silverberg was the legendary one who helped you out in Suikoden 1.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah. Leon is actually recruitable in Suikoden 1. He is Matthew's uncle.
Oh. Right. Yeah, I thought the ages were a bit weird.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there is this huge complicated backstory with these 3 characters that the game keeps gesturing at, but never tells you anything about, except right at the end there is this finally it kind of builds and builds and builds to this confrontation between your guy and their guy, where you think, oh, everything will be revealed and the past will be unveiled and we'll understand what the feud was, and there's nothing. They articulate completely incoherent arguments about why strategy is important, what the goal of strategy is, and it's all framed in this context where your guy, because he can't beat the other guy in actual battle tactics, has done the one thing that the other guy finds inconceivable, which is use himself as bait in a strategy that's going to kill them both by setting a forest fire, I think.
Yep.
And like it's supposed to set up this big thing where your guy believes in the whole over the self, and the other guy is a cynic and believes, no, you should never put yourself at risk, even for your lord and master or your faction. But it's just like they can't actually, because the localizers or possibly the scriptwriters can't actually string a coherent thought together. None of it comes off.
Well, I think. Well, I feel like, of course, I can read bad localizations very well at this point. But,
yeah.
But also, I mean, the reason why I feel that scene was really cowardly and it amounted to nothing is because Shu lives. What's the point? I don't. Why you trade?
Victor pulls him out of the fire.
I know, but you can't. You can't trade these like this this is a war drama. No one dies ever except Nanami. Anyways, you can't trade that level of why I'm alive and then you both just leave it. And you're just like, well, nothing happened. And I'm just like, what? Why now?
It's this game in a nutshell, though. It can't commit to anything.
I will actually correct you on a thing. Kiba also dies, but he dies in battle, so it's accepted.
That's true. And Ridley technically can die if you do...
But then he gets replaced by his son!
Yeah, he gets replaced by his son. If you do the leave choice, which is put at the wrong point in the game, because the Necklord part's great, and I played through the leave part, and that part is great, but it shouldn't be at the part where you're not fighting Island, because that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Annabelle also dies. Like, the character, the mayor of Muse?
Yes.
That Joey kills. She dies, because women are expendable.
Very low death count. 2 women.
Yeah. 2 women and like 1 million innocent villagers in villages that just get burned to the ground by Luca Blight because that's all he knows how to do.
His sword is made of fire. What are you gonna do?
Like, we have been talking now about plot stuff for over an hour, and we could go on because this game has 108 characters, and we could do 10 minutes on how each and every one of them is terrible. But I think actually, it keeps finding new and compelling ways to be terrible. But it would be quite good if we could pivot to the systems for a bit because they're all so terrible and deserve some attention.
We did the dungeons. That's like design. I don't even care about talking about the systems that much. Except I hate the runes because mostly just because they're boring and you can't manage them except for at rune shops. So what I like about a similar system is materia. What I like about materia is that it's very adaptable. You can change it, whenever you want. It starts to become emergent because Squaresoft had fun with it and they put in weird runes like it's just like when you get hit,
command counter.
Yeah, when you get hit, you'll cast some weak spell, right? You start to play around with it, and you can have very unique setups in a system that appears to homogenize, these RPG systems. But
and it has to be said, FF7 actually gives you reasons to change your materia setup.
Yeah,
particularly early on because you can only have a few, and you need specific magics, and you keep fucking things around.
Suikoden 2 is like the plain opposite, where you're very limited slots. Some characters have no slots, some have 1 slot. So you have to...
Some have 1 slot that's permanently filled.
Yeah, that's what I meant by no slot. It's just like I
mean, some actually have no slots.
Oh, really? Well, yeah, the animals don't have any slot, right?
Yeah, but
the beasts...
who fucking cares?
Anyways, and so it's just homogenous because someone's going to have the Great Earth rune because someone needs that. Someone's going to have the healing rune, and that's it. That's all they can do because they don't have any more slots. And I could switch out all my characters. I have a completely different party, and they're still going to have the same abilities. They're going to still effectively be the exact same, the same battle personality, if I could say it like that. Because there's 108 characters, and they're all the same. Is basically what I'm getting at because of the runes.
Yeah. And the only thing that really distinguishes them is, well, some of them have unique special runes, but more generally is the unite attacks. Like different combinations of characters can have specific attacks they can only do in conjunction with that one character or 2 characters. But there aren't enough combinations. So you're almost never going to have a combination in your party unless you specifically build for it. And even when you do, they aren't that powerful.
Yeah.
Like, they're nothing like as powerful as the powerful magic. And the magic combinations are, like, you can... a person who's got 2 runes can combine magic from them, but it takes twice as much MP.
Because you have to basically cast both spells is why it takes 2.
I never did one, so...
I used a couple because, like, they are really powerful, but they're not that powerful.
I felt like casting just 2 of the Great Thunder spell would probably be better, but I never actually tried anything else.
Well, there's one that combines with Great Thunder and gives you the effect of double that, but also heals you, which is quite good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I want to say about the rune stuff. Suikoden 1 was much more limiting because everyone only had 1 rune slot. It made it a lot more annoying, but also more compelling as a system if you can only have one thing. Because, like, if you wanted Stallion, who had a true holy rune, he couldn't have anything else. But in this, Stallion, it's just one of his slots. He can do other things. And it's just like, I can see why they added more slots, but also, it's so much more boring if, like, the main character can actually do things besides his primary rune.
I liked the potential flavor. Like, Luke came with the Blue Gate rune, and I was like, cool, this must be his signature rune. No, I get 4 more of them. And there's... there's these characters, well, they're not cared about at all because they don't have any personality, but they don't even the one part where they would effectively have personality in battle, they can't emote because you have to give them, you just give them the runes and they do the same things everyone else would do. I already said that, but it just annoys me so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is also, I mean, I complimented the enemy sprite work, but there's no sense of definition to the enemies at all. Like, there aren't a lot of different enemies, really, and there's no kind of patterns to them. You can't.
Why do you fight monsters in this game? Why do you fight them?
I don't know. They're just there.
Most of the time, you fight, toward the middle and late, you fight a lot of soldiers, which that makes sense. That's the conflict you're doing. But you also just fight a lot of monsters, and it's not really commented on the game.
Every fortification you go to, like that you're fighting your way through, has a bunch of monsters just wandering around the halls as well.
Yeah,
it's not just soldiers, because the soldier they couldn't come up with enough differences between soldiers to make just a dungeon full of soldiers worth fighting through. It'd just be effectively the same encounter every
Wild
time.
Arms 2 has a lot of monsters, but at least makes a point to make the majority of its boss fights a person. You're fighting because you're fighting a war, so you end up fighting a general, and that rarely happens in Suikoden 2. Even when you meet their generals, they're like, "All right, later, I summoned a bone dragon." It's like, why? Why am I not fighting Uber right now? I don't get it.
To bring back to the point I was trying to make, so there is an element system in this game. There's a 3-element system, and enemies have elemental weaknesses.
Not 3, but there's 5.
They're 5?
Yeah.
I mean, there's kind of a lie if you count them all. Because there's
fire,
Holy and Darkness, too.
Yeah, there's fire, water, wind, lightning, and earth. And
okay.
If you...
Resurrection and darkness.
Yeah. Basically, the only reason I know that is because I had a chart and I figured out where on a pentagram those things would go to and why they lined up with only... Each element can only do unite magic with 2 other elements. And it's because they're directly adjacent to each other on that pentagram. But, there's...
Does that mean they're strong against or weak to the other 2?
I don't know.
Not necessarily. The weaknesses
individual monsters have weaknesses.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because, if there was a system like that and it was consistent and it was a major part of the game, well, that's, a staple, competent JRPG thing, right?
That's also what Pokemon's about.
Suikoden can't get that right.
But there's no sense of that in-game. You can look at enemies and you have no way of knowing that they have weaknesses or that it's worth trying out different weaknesses. You don't have enough tools to consistently try out weaknesses because magic is so rationed.
And also, they are all weak to punch.
Yeah, the most effective thing is usually to just select auto battle, which has all your characters do their basic physical attack.
Here's the loop of the game. You just hit auto battle, and then if it's a boss fight, you use your level 4 spells, and that's it. There's no strategy.
Unless you get really there's a character named Ulan, and you get her, and she has a thing that makes her do 2 times damage, but she can only do it once per battle, unless she's berserked. And you can very early on get a rune that makes you perma-berserked. So if you include her, you can just constantly use that rune and make her do a shit ton of damage.
Well, yeah, I mean,
wow.
I gave my Humphrey double beat and the friendship rune, so he was doing 600 damage per attack, which was cool.
That also reminds me that they fucked up coding the kindness rune, and I want to talk about the speedrun strat because it's hilarious. Basically, the kindness rune gives whatever character an attack bonus based on a kindness factor, which is increased every hour they spend in the party, and basically it counts that every 1 hour 30 minutes, 2 hour 30 minutes, every 30-minute mark, it checks to see whether they're in the party, and if they are, they get a kindness point. This counts up whether you have this rune or not, but there's only one of these runes in the game, and it also increases when you give them the stat boost items, like the seeds from Dragon Quest, but they're called stones of power, magic, defense, whatever. But if they're unconscious at the end of a battle, they lose 1 point. And if you go negative in kindness, it underflows and gets set to 999. The thing is, Berserk, which is a status effect that makes you do 1.5 times damage, calculates after attack. So the speedrun strategy for this game is to equip Nanami and then Sai, the one of the fucking stars, with the kindness rune, underflowed, and then berserk them with another rune that makes them go automatically berserk if they're under half health. They one-shotted Luca Blight. It was incredible.
Wow.
They did 13,000 damage, cut in half to actually match how much HP he has, because he takes half damage from physical attacks. And it's just wow, that's fucked. And
yeah,
it cannot be overstated how easy it is to actually break this game open.
Well, my game crashed multiple times.
Yes,
in both ways. In both ways, helpful, and also I got woken up by a griffin and then it hard locked my game.
All of us had hard crashes at one point or another playing this on the PS3 port. so they haven't been fixed. We'll get onto the major battles more thoroughly in a minute, but it's worth noting that like the one major battle that you actually have to try in has a speedrun strat, which Devon could literally teach me in the space of a minute live on stream because it's so simple to execute.
Yeah.
And then, just like the game isn't even a robust game or well programmed.
That speedrun stat is hilarious because 2 of the characters necessary for it are plot mandatory, and one of them is someone you want to have anyway because they give you a world map.
Oh yeah, fuck this game and fuck it's hiding its fucking world map.
Yeah.
The world map is basically missable. You have to backtrack quite a long way to get it without any hint that it's there.
I'm on like the same thing, but like there's nothing interesting about the battle system, and here's another direction of it. Like, first of all, if you're going to have a game where you just auto-battle the whole time, you should either have an exchange of resources going on, which doesn't happen in Suikoden, or the bosses need to be like meaningfully hard, which kind of happens in Suikoden. But anyway, to compare it to 2 other games that have a ridiculous number of party members, there's Chronicles, which the unique limit breaks on each character is 100% more interesting than this character can do ×2 damage sometimes. Some characters, there's nothing interesting about the Suikoden characters. And in Lisa, every single character has their own unique moveset, which, like, obviously the designer had a lot of fun designing their like 40 characters. And I hate the aesthetic of putting a ton of characters in a game anyways, because I think it undermines the drama and makes it more into a toy box. But Suikoden's toy box sucks. There's no fun. I used every single party member in the game, and they do not differentiate from each other at all. There's no reason to use every single party member. There's no reason to use half the cast. They don't have a reason to be in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also, like, when you're just using auto battle, 6 party members plus often an enemy party of 6 makes for really long turns with nothing to do. You're just watching this attack play out.
One thing I like, only because I drafted it myself and I didn't realize another game would ever do it, was it's not even explained to you in game, but there's like a follow-through mechanic. There's a chance when you defeat an enemy, you'll attack again. And I was like, neat.
Actually, no.
Yeah, like,
it's not like a follow-through mechanic. It's just like sometimes if your tech is high enough, you get extra attacks.
Oh, really? It seemed to only trigger after I defeat an enemy, but
no, it literally just
it's like it's basically a kind of crit, but it's a crit with spillover rather than attacking the same target, rather than more damage to the same target.
Two kinds of crits is still kind of cool because.
Yeah, no, that like some of the stuff like that, and also something else that is nice is that when you are attacking a large group, if you're attacking multiple targets within the group, some of your characters will act at the same time.
Yeah.
And that'll play out. When that happens and like 4 of your characters move at the same time, that looks kind of cool. But as soon as the camera moves to highlight any of it, it's terrible.
You can't see them.
Like the worst is in the final boss, right? There are camera moves to zoom in on your character attack. It's a 5-part boss, and your character attacks one part of it. The camera can zoom in and manage to put the part of the boss that you are attacking, where the damage number will show up, off screen.
Yep.
Like, you'll do the attack, and you won't be able to tell how much it's done.
Also, worth noting is that the final boss can multi-status inflict you with one move.
Oh, that happened to me, and I was like, there was no status effects in this entire game until now. Why?
Yeah, pretty much.
I had a lot worse luck with status effects than either of you, clearly. Like, I almost got a character ballooned off, which...
Fuck
balloon
that status.
It's so great.
Who even does balloon? I don't even know.
The fucking Holly people.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
That's right.
That never happened to me.
Because they also drop.
Yeah,
they also drop
needles.
They drop needles because they're Holly, because they're sharp. But just balloon is a status effect where literally an enemy will tie a balloon to your character, and if you get 3 of them, you float off. Which in another game would be the most, like in a Mario and Luigi game, maybe would be the most gloriously silly idea. And you dispel the status by popping balloons with a needle, and that's great too.
A disposable needle.
And Suikoden drains it of all joy. It's just a thing that happens.
It doesn't need to be in the game. I guess you could have, like, with a certain kind of boss, you could introduce that mechanic, and it wouldn't fit, but at least be entertaining. But nah, they don't do that.
Yeah, and like, there's poison in the game, but it's 5-10 damage a turn. It's all the damage and healing over time effects are completely trivial. for no reason.
So many items give it to you too. You're just like getting 5 HP a turn. It's like, cool, I have
And it's
800
just
HP.
It's time wasting. It's just like, yeah, cool. I'm gonna wait another 3 seconds for my turn to start.
And battles don't last very long either, so you don't get that much HP per turn.
Yeah.
Well, they don't last very many turns, I should say.
Yeah,
Yes.
and the problem is like all the chaff battles, all the random encounters are over in like 2 auto battle selections, and it's just like by the end of the game, even in the final dungeon, like I was just fighting shit by hitting auto battle because there was nothing else I really wanted to do, and then healing up afterwards with items. And it's
Well,
just
you can't really afford to do anything else either because it's
you have
really
to save it for the boss.
restrictive D&D MP.
Which could be compelling. I know some folks would argue the first few Final Fantasy games on NES had that more compelling than this.
Well, like I said, it's that kind of I need to save all this for the boss is compelling when you feel like there's times where wait, I can't actually save it, or there's an exchange of resources going on, or anything. But if I'm just like I can't use them, and none of the battles are going to threaten me either, it's just very boring.
Yeah.
There's no joy in the design.
Also, by the time this game came out, we had all been trained to that reflex of, no, I've got to save everything for the final boss regardless. I have got to save everything. And, like, now nobody uses elixirs at all, ever, in Final Fantasy games. Because you can't, because you need them for the final boss. But then you don't use them there, because you might need them for the next boss.
I'm actually very liberal with ethers, and I cast spells whenever I feel like it.
Yeah, I'm not.
But I couldn't even do it in
doing-
Suikoden. I couldn't do it. They don't let you. I would cast level 1 spells, but that's because they're useless.
The funny thing was, I started out the fucking game because the level 1 spell on the protagonist is actually fucking good. Like, oh, hey, a free heal for everyone that says 70, but usually goes up to like 100 or 150 sometimes.
It's base. That just lists which is dumb.
But like,
too.
I gave him the fucking... There's a rune that you can put on your weapons. It's just like, oh yeah, sometimes you'll recover level 1 spells. And I'm just like, yes, I'm going to be unfucking stoppable. And I was like, oh, wait, the kindness rune makes me actually unstoppable. Let's just go with that.
Yeah. It's very much, it leans towards physical attack most of the time. So, the ordinary combat's bad. Now let's talk about the 2 non-ordinary combat systems in the game.
Shitty Fire Emblem.
I forgot there's 2.
Oh, yeah.
There's 2. There's shitty Fire Emblem, and there's the duels, which are rock, paper, scissors.
Rock, paper, scissors with like fucking tells.
Life or death, rock, paper, scissors. Yeah, I was about to say, I would actually like the audacity of just fucking rock, paper, scissors if it wasn't true rock, paper, scissors was just random and you're just like, well, I'm going to die. That would be stupid, but I would love it. Right?
Yeah.
But this isn't, it's
That
not
is
like
the kind of thing you would love.
Yeah, it's not like that. In Suikoden 2, they say a line, and that line they say is going to correlate to what kind of, if they're going to pick rock, paper, scissors. So, I mean, I was using a guide, so they'd say their line, I'm like, okay, and I straight counter them, and they die instantly.
Can you imagine playing that without a guide?
I would
just,
think...
if there was any risk of you losing...
I mean, here's what you would... Well, first of all, I would have save states, personally. But you would have to write down their line and what attack they did, and that's what you'd be doing. And that's
you would just have to compile the guide yourself over the course of multiple losses.
And that would be
because there's
immensely frustrating.
40 lines of dialogue per fight. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah, so that system... And, I get the idea, because this is not a system... The ordinary combat system would be shit with duels. Yeah? If you just wanted to do a duel in that system, it'd be terrible. There is one somewhere in the game, and it's rubbish. So they invented this other system, which is supposed to be more dynamic. And, if they'd come up with a system that in any way worked, it would be more dynamic.
You want to... Speaking of dynamic, apparently they left some debug buttons in the fucking game, and if you press R1, the camera stops where it is in those duels.
Really?
Yeah, the speedrunner was talking about it. He's just like, yeah, I'm going to pause this way back at where the camera starts to pull in. And I'm like, really compelling look, guy. And then you can restart it again with R2. And it's just like, okay, well, why?
Wow.
Why did you leave that in?
I wish I'd known about that to try that on stream.
Oh, yeah. But, yeah, the duels are really, not compelling because you either compile the guide yourself, make random guesses and get it right first try, or use a guide.
Yeah, to be fair, like the first one, I assumed it was like I assumed that the dialogue was just a script and it was random, and I just basically guessed, and I won almost perfectly. But I was very lucky.
But then we need to actually go back and talk about the major battles because they're garbage.
I guess
when we said they were shitty Fire Emblem, they have permadeath.
I think I just figured out what they were meant to do with the duels. It's that, like, from their line, you're supposed to guess what the attack they do, like reading your opponent, but that's still stupid.
Yeah, but like you can't read the lines because they're too generic.
Well, no, it's because the localization's awful.
That too.
Possibly, yeah. But yeah, that gets duels out of the way. We oughtn't to forget that they're in the game and they're terrible. Now let's talk about major battles.
See, major battles...
That's kind of the Suikoden thing.
Major battles are just glorified cutscenes in this game.
Yes.
And I think that would be fine if it didn't have all the nonsense systems and the fact that there's permadeath.
And the fact that there's permadeath. And they just take so long because they're screen-wide maps, but your units can move 1 or 2 squares.
Or 3 if you get really wild.
Yeah, there is a way to get 3, which goes back to the one battle where you actually have to do something.
Well, wait. Let me just say how most of the time you don't have to do anything. There's a dearth of mechanics. There's basically nothing you can do besides attack. Attacking would be, you have essentially a 25% chance of completely demolishing them or doing no damage. 75 is doing no damage. And so every time you attack, you're sitting there like, well, did I die? I don't know.
Well, the thing is, you can actually calculate your odds of fucking hitting a thing.
Yeah.
Because it's stupid, but like...
Well, you also get a character that tells you.
Yeah, but like, that's only when you're in control of that unit.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Actually, in fairness, we say shitty Fire Emblem, we've got to recognise that it is also equally much shitty Advance Wars.
That's what it's like. I mean, it's just...
The combat looks like Advance Wars.
It is just the most shitty. There is... When you attack, it is... You either instantly die or you do nothing.
Yeah, because like most of the time you're going to be fighting units with really high defense stats, and the calculation is basically you roll a d20 and your goal... Okay, so you have an attack stat and a defense stat. You take your attack stat, you add 4, and you subtract the defense stat of the target, and that out of 20 is how much chance you have of hitting the enemy.
And it's whether you hit or not, and not how much damage you do, which is why it's like life or death, basically.
And there's a special skill that you have to, like, you only ever do 1, unless you have a special skill called critical, and then sometimes you just do 2. And it's just like... Ugh.
But anyways, these are pointless because actually what happens in the battles is you'll pass like 2 turns, and then something completely outside your control happens, and then you win or you lose, and that's it. That's the battle.
Yeah, they're all, again, except for that last one, very heavily scripted. And it just uses this to kind of tell you that things are happening. To the extent, there's one battle where you don't have to participate in it, but if you choose to participate in it literally deploys you behind a wall of your own troops that you can't move through because you don't have sufficient move to just watch.
As refugees get slaughtered.
But yeah, so the last battle is the one where it's all building up to this one battle where you actually have to do shit, where you have to break down the defenses of the enemy castle. But you can build a unit which has 2 bonus move and can walk through walls, and you just sprint for the empty space in the enemy castle because they left one.
And you have a character who has shortcut.
I wanted to actually like do that fight because it's the only fight in the game, and it's pathetic even if you actually fight it, because the AI does not, at least for me, the AI did not move from their spots. So
that doesn't surprise me actually.
They were just standing still, and I fought them there. I defeated just Colgan. I beat Colgan. I could walk in, and I was like, that was it. That was the final battle.
I did it legit too, but I was just like, Becky, you're gonna want to just fucking walk through this wall, and you're gonna be good.
Yeah, you're gonna need.
Yeah.
You need George Prime because no one else has enough defense. No one else has enough defense to actually fight the superpowered units. Because I guess the idea is you only need to fight 1 superpowered units, but it's just really dumb.
Can we also
There's
talk
no
about
strategy.
There's a man named Georg Prime. It is Georg, not George.
Oh.
And his actual name in the Japanese is Georg Prime.
Yeah, I had to say his last name though.
Can we talk about Freed Yamamoto?
I just called him Freedy because I don't know why there's
it's
a Y
written
there.
Freedy because they didn't have room in English.
No one else has a
for
last name. Why does he
Yamamoto.
have one?
Freed Y. Yeah, Freddy.
Freddy.
Yeah.
He's rubbish as well. He's one of the worst characters in combat. He does like 15 damage.
Yeah, he's
I liked him in the
awful.
story because he's just a goofball. There's no reason for him to be there.
You also take him to go see his wife, and she's just like, "Oh, I'll join the war effort. I will do laundry for literally the entire war," and that's her job. She does laundry. It was actually less ridiculous when in Suikoden 1 you found this lady just like doing laundry in a village and being like, "Hey, I like doing laundry, but I need some soap. Could you go do this fetch quest for me and get some soap?" And you have to go on this trading quest around this town she's in to get a bar of soap. And then she's just like, "No, actually I had some, but hey, you're all right."
Really?
Yes.
Fucking hell.
She's just like, "Hey, you're all right. I'll do your laundry for you. I really like doing laundry." And she joins up and does your laundry, and it's just like, way to characterize women.
Well, Suikoden 2 is, though, it's not like that, though. It's just like the only wife in the game does her laundry.
Well, no.
No, because the other wife in the game keeps the inn.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And then the third wife dies. That's Joey's wife.
No, she doesn't die.
No, she survives.
She is ritual sacrifice. Sorry, I should have said that.
No, she's fake ritual sacrifice.
But she's still, like, to everyone else, she's ritual sacrificed. So, like...
Yes.
And also, the girlfriend of Hicks, Tengar, ended up in my final party. They returned from Suikoden 1, and they got exempted from, like, all the dumb plot shit in this game with Necklord because she already got kidnapped by, like, Necklord as a wife in the first game. So it's just like, she already got her time in the fridge.
Oh, God. Yeah. Let's not dwell too long on this game's treatment of women, because it's... dire.
I mean, you say that, but I made a spreadsheet with all 35 notable female characters.
Yeah, you missed the one positive detail, which is that Millie's resolution, as listed in the closing sequence of the game, is she goes off to search the world for a mate for her freakish monster pet.
Yeah,
which is amazing. I want to play the Millie post Suikoden 2 game. That would be cool.
That would be like Aliens, the JRPG. We're gonna make this alien thing fuck another one. Have fun with that. But yeah, like all the women in this game are like, oh, they died, or they're terrible in combat, or they're just like homekeepers, or they're Apple who fucked up strategy so bad that you have to recruit another person.
It's man.
Just like, yeah, a man.
The best man.
God, I would never let him be a best man. He would be obnoxious.
All her dialogue from then on is just like, "Oh, I'm so much worse than Shu. Why am I even here? I can't do anything that he can do." It's just like, you don't even need to externalize that anymore. Why do you have to keep saying that over and over again?
Yeah. And also there's Vicky, who is also a returnee from the first game, who is a teleport lady. She will teleport you places, and then her resolution in the ending is she gets drunk on champagne and warps herself 15 years in the future, I think.
Well, she warps herself into the next game.
To the next game.
You know there's a secret room that you can only get to by her teleport going awry?
Really?
I've literally never had that happen.
What's in it? What is
it? Just random treasures. But, like, she serves as your teleporter. And she's quite a powerful teleporter, actually. Like, she can teleport you most places in the world, except for that one castle in the mountains that you can only get to by walking through an entire forest path dungeon, because fuck this game.
I had to walk that dungeon, like, 10 times. Because I didn't understand the triggers. I didn't know who I was supposed to recruit. Sorry.
Let me finish the point about Vicky. Right? She's in your castle. She can teleport you wherever. Her teleports have a chance of going awry and sending you to the wrong place. It's very rare, but it can happen. One of the wrong places she can send you is a locked room in the back end of one of the castles, not your castle, which has a bunch of treasures in. And that's the only way to get those treasures.
How do you get out of that room?
There's also, you can probably...
It's only locked from one side, I think, is the idea.
Also, she can teleport you into the bath that you can also build in your fucking castle. I actually wanted to bring up Wild Arms 2, because Wild Arms 2 has, what's her face? Lilica?
Yeah, that's her name.
Lilka. She gets introduced to the party because she has a teleport gem, but she's, like, really bad with teleport shit. So she just, like, teleports into the town where the party is and gets involved in shit. But, like, there is, a a thing you can only do if you eventually get that teleport item back that's just like infinite teleports wherever, but you can only get to a certain place if you use the teleport item with her in the lead, and her teleport goes wrong, and she goes to this place, and then you get to make level 2 spells. And it's just like, that just happens when she's in the lead. It's not like a random thing. And it's just like, that was a much better use of that joke and gimmick, and it came out a year later.
I'll also add that, like, the reason she's bad at teleporting because it contributes to her character arc that she has. Mm-hmm. She's just not very confident in her magic, and living up to her sister, who was supposed to be your mage, but she died. And the whole gimmick, it's a joke, but it like affects the plot and the fiction. And Vicky's does not. It's just to characterize this girl as an airhead, and that's literally it.
Yeah, and it apparently it has borne out the theory that because Vicky is teleporting all the time and appears basically the same in all the stuff, Suikoden games came out in the order they did because they're actually following Vicky's traveling through time, which is fucking hilarious.
That's weak.
Yeah.
God above. Right. What else do we want to say about this terrible game?
Oh, God. Do you want to get into this fucking Schreier piece? Because, Jesus.
No.
I know.
No, we don't. I don't think there's anything to be gained by doing that.
I mean, you would be surprised. Mr. Schreier calls it, like Game of Thrones meets Pokemon. That is a quote.
That's it. That's actually the best quote.
It is the best. I can kind of see where he's coming from, because Game of Thrones is also terrible. And you do have to collect a lot of shit in this game.
Except it is nothing like Game of Thrones.
Oh, right. There was another thing that I wanted to get into. He has this hypothetical Q&A format. So why is everyone so obsessed with the second one? It's special. Now comes the fun bit. He mentions that Suikoden 2 blew everyone who actually played it away. Here's another quote from Wikipedia. Suikoden 2 saw a limited print run, and the lackluster initial response prevented a reprint. So,
yeah, Suikoden 2 was a really expensive game. Maybe it still is, I don't know.
That's probably why it's so revered then, because lots of people saw the price tag and went, oh, it must be good.
We have a question about that, so let's move on to questions.
I don't think anyone from the Suikoden revival is going to be listening this deep in, but we
have 2 questions from
them. Yeah, they're asking, but I don't think they're going to finish the podcast. That's what I'm saying.
No, they're not. Yeah. If you are, God bless you for your
it might
generosity.
not sound it, but I desperately tried to like and understand this game. I did my best, and like, this is me doing my best. This is what came out of it. And maybe that doesn't mean anything if you don't know me, but I agonized over this game because of how it's revered in the canon. It probably just stressed me out, like gave me more mental stress than it was really worth.
Yeah. Like, I think it's worth us taking a moment to say, look, this is not us being deliberately contrarian. This is not us hating old games, because 1, this game isn't that old, even though it looks a lot older than it is.
And
2, if you actually look back over the old games we've played, we have loved most of the old games that we've actually played for this podcast. This game is just bad. It's not that it's aged poorly, it was always bad. It doesn't work. Nothing about it works or hangs together in any way.
And there's no compelling reason for it not to work. It's a style of game that needs to work desperately, and it doesn't work.
And it's not even fun.
Yeah.
Like, it can't even manage. This is the most basic thing that any game can aspire to. It can't do that.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, the only reason I finished it so far ahead of the other 2, and we did actually have to postpone it a bit because Leroy was a bit behind, but that's also because, like, God and Suikoden conspired to fuck up his life for a bit. The reason I finished it so far ahead of everyone, both of my pals, is because, like, I have fucked up insomnia, and I would just wake up at like 4:30 a.m. and, like, I couldn't think of anything better to do with my time than just, like, get it over with. And it was just, like, you can attest to this, I was just fucking laughing in the back half of this game, waiting for you two to get to...
I wish I was laughing. I was laughing at Xenogears. I had a fun time laughing at Xenogears. I was just miserable playing Suikoden 2. It just wasn't even funny to me.
Yeah, this game doesn't even have Choo-Choo dying for your sins.
See, like, I was laughing because I was just like, wow, people really think this is, like, the peak of JRPGs. And then I had like 3 weeks to like actually play other games and be like, Jesus, people don't play other shit because they're busy playing Suikoden 2. And I just got bummed out.
Yeah, like it's been a bleak month playing this game, actually, for all of us.
It's fucking appropriate that we're ending like the worst fucking year with this game.
Well, it ended up... 2016 was a hugely optimistic year, I should actually say. It started out hugely optimistic, and it ended one of the worst fucking years since a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I've had a good year. I basically transitioned this year. That's hugely positive change in my life. It's still a sucky year, and this is still an appropriate way to end it, because it's a sucky game.
And we are going to end this before midnight for Becky, so we can trap the pain of this game in 2016. We got
about 48 minutes, so
not
hopefully
gonna-
it won't
we're
take
not
that long
gonna spend-
answering
Yeah,
questions.
This episode, it's pretty much over.
Let's do
Yeah.
questions.
I heard the questions there. They seemed, we're probably not capable to answer any of them, but...
Well, let's, we got 4 from non-Suikoden Revival Movement folks, and
Oh, that's nice.
and 2 from Suikoden Revival Movement folks. So let's start with the non first. From ABCB Tom, who are your favorite characters and least favorite?
Well, like, Nanami is the only character, so I really liked her, and I'm a sucker for, like, cheesy romance, so I really liked Ailee as well, but that's it.
Okay, my favorite character was Humphrey, and it's just really dumb, but when you meet him, you have a conversation with him, but he doesn't say anything.
It's so good.
So you're trying to make small talk with
Weird.
this guy, and he's just like looking at you, and he's not like he just there's that.
That's
And then he
pretty good.
pays for your in.
Yeah, he pays for your inn, and when you wake up, the innkeeper says, Humphrey liked the conversation he had with you, so he paid for your inn. And I was like, wow, that's really relatable. this guy can't talk to you, but he really liked that you decided to talk to him anyways. And I was like, okay, that's me. And so I had to use Humphrey for the rest of the game, even though he never says anything ever again.
Mhm.
I mean, Suikoden is filled with those little moments, but I'm not a person who's like, wow, the little moments RPGs are great, because that's why Final Fantasy VI gets way too much praise.
Yeah. My favorite characters ended up being Nanami pre-events, because like once she just resigns herself to like playing dead is just like, okay, great, you're not a good character anymore because you're just, yeah, my brother should be the hero and not actually care about me. Yeah, I'm gonna go home.
I mean,
It's
Nanami
like,
is the
fuck
best.
off.
Nanami's the best character because she's the only character.
Yeah, I like Nanami, but also ended up using Tengar because the whole way you get Hicks and Tengar back is like you have to go on this fake quest with Hicks as like a rite of passage for right into adulthood for Hicks, and Tengar is just like faking it the entire time, and it's just like really funny to do all that shit.
As it turns out, the side quests in Suikoden are more compelling, barely, but than the main game.
Yeah. How about least favorite?
How do you dislike characters in this game? My least favorite character is Joey because he makes no fucking sense.
I was almost gonna say Joey. I
Yeah.
found Joey really compelling. Except
Actually, no.
his
My
execution
least
is
favorite
horrible.
character is look Nat because she's everything is her fault.
Basically, yeah.
My least favorite character is the developer.
My least favorite character is
Konami.
Konami.
My least favorite character is the lack of one this game has.
Oh.
That was bad. Okay.
Yeah, my least favorite character is Joey, I guess. And it's not because he's a villain, it's because he's a terrible character and wastes potential.
Yeah, I really would have, like I mentioned before, I would have liked it if he was like this really fucked up patriot.
It could be anything.
Literally anything, but like...
Because I still like Delita. I'm a Delita apologist, and I can't. Joey sucks. He's like
Joey.
the worst
Joey is
Delita.
like bad deleter. It's incredible.
Yep. Also, what about the recurring characters from Suikoden 1? In an earlier age, this was mind-blowing, but now it's probably routine. As the only person from who's played Suikoden 1, they're all kind of boring, and because, like, except for Flick and Victor, who were clearly written for this game first and foremost, and then showed up in Suikoden 1 as kind of a back cameo, none of them really work. And, Then Necklord shows up. It's
They
just
seem to be more like
fuck.
forced memes than like characters that came. They didn't come back for any good reason except, like you said, Victor and Flick.
Yeah.
So
They needed
I
to
don't know.
fill. They needed to fill the
continuity.
castle.
I will say continuity actually isn't a mind blowing thing. It just doesn't happen in RPGs.
Yeah, because
or
usually
video games that often.
they like to make disparate stories and tell individual one-off things because it's like that's easier to.
I
maintain.
feel very mean, but it's not a mind blowing thing when the characters come back in Uncharted 2.
Yeah. Jesus, I never thought about that, huh? Fucking
just what sequels
Uncharted
do.
4. Yeah. And like, I guess people are just mind blown because like Final Fantasy was a norm.
There is an audacity to it to say, all right, you mean your Warp's going to be the same character, your Rune Keeper's going to be the same character, and we're not going to tell you why, we're just going to do it. But also, it's just not, I don't really appreciate that. I don't care.
I mean, it's worth noting that like the save file carrying forward thing, like it's a very technological thing, but it's one of those things that was very exciting when it happened, because not many games do that.
Mhm.
Like, people are still excited that Mass Effect did
I was
that.
going to say, very famous, well-regarded games like Mass Effect still do it.
And like,
are lauded
I
for it.
don't think Suikoden was the first game to do it, but it was rare, and I think I remember kind of hearing about it in excitement. I always remember being kind of wishing that games would do that.
Yeah. It's interesting. That facet of it is interesting, but also, like, they don't really do anything for me. Next question from Kuragane. Which characters did you end up favoring in your parties, and was it because of characterization or utility?
I picked exclusively on characterization, actually, because everyone has the same utility, and if I was going to just do the best party members in Suikoden 2, I don't know, that means I have no soul, because the game's not hard, and you don't get anything out of it except better stats.
So, I mean, you say all the characters function interchangeable. The exception is Stallion, because the only way to get fast movement on the world map is Stallion. So Stallion was a fixture.
I didn't use Stallion, though. I was like, on one hand, yeah, that's very good, but on the other, he's a meme, and I don't want any memes in my party.
Gotta go fast.
Yeah. So I had Stallion, I had Eiley, Rune, and Bolgan, because I wanted to keep Eiley with the protagonist, because I'm a sap. So, and then, like, those two have a combo attack with her, and, like, okay. And then Millie, like, I picked up Millie by accident early on, and somebody said she was bad, and I was like, fuck it, I'm going to take this to the final boss. And I did. It was pointless.
I used definitely not great characters. I used Anita just because I wanted 3 girls in my party, and Anita was a very competent frontliner. I guess that's both a combination of utility and aesthetic.
Yeah, like, Millie is the antithesis of that, because her special attack is she falls over. Like, she literally falls over in her attack animation every time. It's not a joke thing.
Anita's flirtatious and competent. She was one of the good female characters in the game.
And completely optional. And
I used Karen, the all aesthetic. I just think she's very cute, and I was just like, the fact that she'll wear her dress into battle, but then once she starts fighting, she'll take it off and she'll be in her dancer gear. I thought that was really cool. And I use Sierra also just aesthetic. I like vampires. And then I used Humphrey because I relate to him on a soul level. And then I used Maz's utility. I needed a mage, and I got him at the end, and he had mana. He had 2 level 4 spells. I was like, all right, I'm using this fat guy.
Yeah, my party ended up being the protagonist, Flick Victor, just because they were already on level for most of the stuff that I needed to do, and then Kasumi because she's a ninja and can suplex things, so I guess that's characterization, which is fucked up. And then Eiley, I think it was Eiley and Tengar because knife ladies are cool and they have decent MPs.
I almost used Eiley because one of the few actual characters in the game, but I didn't.
Yeah, but yeah, I mostly went for utility.
Literally, I used every single character in some capacity of the story, which probably inflated my playtime because I had to constantly re-equip characters and put runes on them.
Yep.
Which is very tedious because, well, the menus are bad, and specifically rune menus, I have to go to 2 different, I have to go to the blacksmith and the rune master to change my runes on 2 different spots.
And they're in 2 different towns until you get your own.
I didn't need to do this, and I actually did stop doing it because you don't get a lot out of it. But at first, I was like, "Oh, I got to be efficient." And I realized, no, I don't. But it took me until like I was short for time when I stopped actually doing it every time. But yeah, I used every single party member in Capacity Story, and the game is actually doesn't facilitate that. The game, you get party members way too fast. Sometimes you get like 10 at a time, and there's not actually things to do with them. The game, despite giving all these party members, doesn't even intend for you to use all of them, which is antithetical and confusing. You'll have to go back to your base all the time if you're going to want to use all the party members, basically. Which I found it wasn't so difficult to do it in Chrono Cross, or at least which other games I compared it to, but in Suikoden it was like impossible and felt unnatural. It seems like you're supposed to just pick your favorites and use them, which, why is there 100 characters then? I don't, whatever.
Yeah, not to mention, it's got the whole, I would say Fire Emblem problem, but that's usually to like recuperate like your forces if you fucking kill someone off.
Like the other side of it is like Last Remnant, where there are a lot of characters, but you cannot use them. You actually have to specify and use the ones really specifically. But I think that's better because you still get the aesthetic of having this army, but you're not like, they're not just like faceless interchangeable dweebs. You have to create this ludic mechanical relationship with characters that you play with, I guess.
Yeah. But a lot of the stuff is just like, I want to use you, but also I know what my team is capable of right now, and I'd rather not do that. And then there's stuff like, I don't think we even mentioned that when you're fighting Luca Blight, you have to prep 3 teams, basically.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Which is just like, fuck off. That would be cool if you had literally any, like, build-up to that, but no, it's just like, Vic and Flicker. Vic and Flicker.
Consistent thing.
Fuck's sake.
Because you do a lot of raids, but you do 1-party raids, which, I don't know why don't you do 2-party raids? Why don't you do 3-party raids? Not the only time you do 3 parties is to kill Luca.
And that's just because they really want to paint him as this unstoppable murder machine, and he's not even the last boss.
Though that's even a monkey paw thing. I actually wouldn't want more party raids, but
Yeah.
It would contribute
Well, Infinite
to something.
Undiscovery is that, and like you don't want to. Like, it's merciful because it only makes you play one strand of the 3-party raids, but you don't want to play the others. Anyway, next question. From
Samuel Howitt. A common talking point for Suikoden 1 was that it was supposed to be an SNES game. Is that in any way reflected in Suikoden 2? And for those of you who have played the first, are those sensibilities noticeable in that as well?
Well, Suikoden 2 would be a horrible SNES game too, so...
It would be a horrible SNES game. It would look less anachronistic.
Yeah, it would look less anachronistic, and also its poor design would be more, like, palatable. Just because it's, like, so not out of place. It's just so bad.
It would actually look better on SNES because it would have to deal with the limitations of an SNES, and it wouldn't have its quote-unquote painterly aesthetic, and so, like, the uniformity of it would feel more natural. It would still suck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got the Wild Arms problem, but, like, 2 years later.
It doesn't necessarily feel as much... Like, Wild Arms 1 screams this is an SNES game, but I don't think Suikoden 2 does. Suikoden 2 is coming to that, like, more free-form, where you don't necessarily have to make a game because you're on a system kind of feel to it. It doesn't feel like a PlayStation game, it just feels like a modernish game. Terrible, but...
Wild Arms Suikoden, we mentioned earlier, like, the fan game thing, but Wild Arms looks like a fan game made in imitation of a SNES game.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, it doesn't have the understanding of why SNES games look the way they do. It just goes, well, we'll do that, but we'll put 5 screens for every 1 screen in the SNES game. Of trees.
Yeah, the first one, I think the dungeons were a bit more varied, but it was still, like, very, like, you could find really this level of boring place on Earth in reality, and it would be just as boring to walk through them, which is unfortunate.
Wild Arms had some boring caves and forests, yeah.
But yeah, Suikoden also has that issue. Yes.
The most boring.
Suikoden, the most boring. Okay, next question. From Proxy. Would you all say that the reputation of this game is partially stemmed from it being a collector's item for quite some time before its easier access via PSN? In general, would you say that the legacy of a game due to its status among collectors conflates the idea that it must be a quality game due to its scarce availability? I think it's not just that it's rare, it's that the people who actually kept a hold of it were the obnoxious fanboys.
Yeah, I think also, like, the technological saving your save file across games ties into limited availability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because you don't have to just own one of these games in order to see everything. You got to own them all, and that makes the availability really pressing. So then you feel the availability more.
This is an aside, but I guess a lot of people don't like Sonic CD, which I don't understand. But before people could actually play Sonic CD, like on their computer or on their phone, people were just saying flat out it's the best Sonic game, and no one could refute that because no one's actually played it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now people have played it and they're like, actually, I don't like that game at all, and it's not very good. And that's, I guess, yeah, you could say it's kind of like Suikoden 2. The availability of the game, and that's like a modern availability of games just gone up in general, and that's that's like the existence of this podcast. We play these old games that people say are the best ever, and we're like, well, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely, like, this game is particularly conducive to hagiography. Yeah, because it's not just the availability, it's also this, like, well, it's a rendition of an ancient Chinese novel, which is a claim to high culture that few games are able to coherently make. And all claims to high culture are bullshit, but games have been desperate for claims to high culture.
Spec Ops' connection to Heart of Darkness was so tenuous and not there at all. It actually makes me laugh.
An aside, right? I was just I had dinner with my family yesterday, and my sister's boyfriend came along, and he's a gamer as well, and he really is the only member of the family that I can talk to. But we got to talking, and he mentioned Spec Ops, and to explain it to my parents, he was like, "It's Heart of Darkness, but a video game," and I was like, I'm biting my tongue so hard right now.
Yeah, it's like, no, it's not.
I mean, I haven't read Heart of Darkness and I haven't played Spec Ops, but
I have done both, and I can assure you it's not.
Yeah. I'm mostly going on your opinion because you're usually right about these things.
I'm not a fan of Heart of Darkness. I'm not a fan of Spec Ops, but I mean, if you want to say Spec Ops is Apocalypse Now as a video game, you're closer to the mark, which Apocalypse Now is said to be Heart of Darkness, and it's not either. Okay, anyways.
But yeah, if a small group of people who love a thing are going to be able to control the discourse on it, of course things are going to get twisted, and that's precisely what happened with Suikoden 2. And also, just like, people have bad taste.
Well, it's also got the thing that, like, FF Tactics has and Chrono Cross has of being from the Golden Age, but not a Final Fantasy game. From the age of which...
Wait. The Neo Golden Age, because the Golden Age is supposedly SNES games, but everyone loves the PlayStation games.
Yeah,
and
well,
also the PlayStation 2 is like the second Golden Age or whatever, so it's just like...
No, every age is golden, because I grew up there.
The reason I say Golden Age is because that is probably the point at which the RPG, specifically the Japanese RPG, had the largest share of the global market.
This is it would be the real Golden Age, where SNES would be the Silver Age if we're doing this.
Well, I mean, the SNES, the big games were like Mario and Zelda, right? The a lot more kind of
Donkey Country
stuff.
yeah.
And like commercially. But the PS1 age is defined almost entirely by Final Fantasy VII. That game was such a landmark. So Final Fantasy is the obvious one, but it's not ever cool to be, for your favourite thing to be the most popular thing, right? You've got to like the most popular thing, because everybody does. But you've got to be able to... It's kind of almost a hipster thing of, yeah, that's good, but this small indie thing, smaller thing, is better because fewer people know about it and they're all experts because they don't know about it so much. And it's hard to get hold of, so you know it must be important. Right from the get-go, everything about this game is perfectly attuned to build that kind of cachet. So it doesn't matter that the game's shit. It's just, like...
I honestly, I feel like even a bad political plot like Suikoden 2 is still an appeal to high culture just as much as calling it Suikoden is. In Western literature, being of a war or about a war in a fantasy context or otherwise that's like high art. That's Ernest Hemingway. And so Suikoden 2...
there's a lot of pulp fantasy about wars that isn't true.
But I mean, that's why it gets bandied about as Game of Thrones, which is supposedly a crossover of high and low culture. I don't even want to talk about it.
It's not, though. God, fuck Game of Thrones.
But I mean, that's what I mean.
No, don't fuck it. Set fire to it.
That's the space Suikoden seems to be occupying in people's minds, where it's this epic greatest achievement of storytelling in video games.
God.
I read a comment that said that, like literally that. So
Yeah, God. Fucking thank you, Truck Pump. It's really obvious that, like, enough people just won't play it, or they will play it and just, they're bad at appreciating, like, actual video games that are good. Yes, I am throwing so much shade right now, but, like, this game is really bad, and it completely baffles me that a not insignificant amount of people have the paradigm that this was the peak of JRPGs and likely will always be, because it's just astounding.
it's not understandable. I cannot imagine. I have a really hard time seeing any context. Like Xenogears, I can see it. I can see what kind, like where you got to be in your life, how much. When you sit down and play Xenogears,
Shrugged, right?
Yes,
Where
yes, it's like Atlas
if
Shrugged.
you read it in the right frame, it's like, oh shit, this is the most profound thing ever.
You can actually learn things from Xenogears. I don't see, and I'm not saying you need to learn things for it to be a great work of fiction, but I don't. There's no
one
context.
way that there could be value here, but there's nothing in Suikoden.
There's no context in Suikoden where you sit down and be like, this is it. This is the greatest achievement in storytelling, because even against other video games, it's not there. But against storytelling, it's never going to be there.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the problem, of course, just is that, like I said, enough people just will take the discourse for granted and not actually think for themselves, or just really do think it's the greatest thing ever, that this myth is going to persist. And that's why we're here.
Yeah, I'm fortunately extremely skeptical now. Whenever an RPG is called the best, if anything, I instantly think it's probably the worst at something.
Yeah. And we are, like, okay, Becky and I are really big fans of Tales games, and you could fairly point out that in the West, we're kind of pushing that whole, like, well, the biggest thing isn't really all that great. This thing that is less popular is actually good. But I think we can back that up with our, like, critical muscles, and this game is not a good example of a JRPG, let alone a good example of a good JRPG. Like, it's just incredibly clumsy, and I don't like it.
Well, in my opinion, I actually think it's a critic's responsibility to highlight works that have less social and cultural capital if you feel like they're undervalued. But that Suikoden 2 is, the reverse. It's overvalued.
Yeah, it is.
And there's highlighting the undervalued, and then there is claiming the inaccessible as valuable because you have access to it.
Yeah.
And that's what's happened with Suikoden. Yeah, the people who've played it are going, I've got this thing, and you can't have it, but it's great.
Games are not rare minerals. The scarcity does not make them more valuable. Now, we did get 2 questions prompted by the Suikoden revival movement, which, God bless their souls, I'm gonna not wish them luck with their duties.
That's me. I admire your dedication, because it's just like our dedication, right? It's just
Maybe Suikoden 3, 4, and 5 are varying degrees of not shit. But I'm not holding out hope, and I won't be holding my breath, because then I would be holding my breath for something like 200 hours as I work my way through those. But they did spread our questions form around, and we got 2 questions from folks prompted by that support. So thank you for the questions. From Katsi, I'm also going to make fun of this question because it's the most useless question. What's something about Suikoden 2 you would like to discuss even without being asked? See the last 2 hours of our podcast.
Yeah, we just did that.
If I wasn't asked, if I was just unprompted to talk about Suikoden 2, I'd just say it's terrible. I'm sorry. No, wait, I would say it's super boring, and I lost like time off my life playing it. I'm sorry. That's unprompted. That's what I'd go to.
Yep.
If you prompt me, it'd be more constructive.
Much like, whatever. I would like to discuss how poison doesn't work that way.
Oh god, let's not get into that.
I mean, I want to get into that, but I won't. From Tallulah Soul, do you love Lorelei? No.
Who? I didn't even find Lorelei.
Yeah, that's our answer.
I like Sierra. That'll be my answer.
Good. I think Okay, I mentioned the stupid poison thing. One of the plot points.
No.
I have to.
Every plot point is bad.
Every plot point is bad, but this is extra bad because this is not how fantasy poison works. This is not how the human body works, and I have to talk about this. And you know I have to talk about this, Becky. You can't stop me.
We got 20 minutes to midnight. Make it quick.
One of the plot points is that Joey is being knighted, and part of the knighting ceremony is cutting his wrist and putting his blood in some wine for the King of Highland to drink. And he has conspired with Luca Blight to poison his blood so that the king will die. The king dies within like 20 seconds of drinking the poisoned wine, the poisoned blood wine, and then Joey collapses, and the only reason he apparently survived is that he was drinking antitoxin for days. If it was strong enough that poisoning his blood, which is what happened, wouldn't have killed him, it also wouldn't have killed the king, because that's not how fucking blood works. And
I mean, basically, if you're drinking antitoxin, it'd also be in your blood, so it wouldn't poison him.
Yeah. It's just like, that was a major plot point. That's where I stopped taking this game any mote of seriousness. It's just incredibly bad.
Although, like, I guess this king was really sick, so that's maybe...
No, he
wasn't really. He wasn't?
Yeah.
I thought it was an illusion, like, he's not doing anything anymore, because he's sick, I guess not, huh?
Okay, 2 requests. 1, can we stop trying to work out how this is supposed to have worked? Because it doesn't matter.
Yes, please.
2, if you are listening to us and want to quibble with our interpretations, please don't. Because 1, you will not convince us. 2, quibbling over the lore in a video game.
No, wait, not even the lore. If you want to tell us we're wrong about our opinion on Suikoden 2, actually, I don't care. I'll be wrong. I'll take that. I'll take that now. I'll take the L. I'm wrong, right? Just don't message me.
I believe the correct and only response I will have to this is, please fuck off, and then I will find the block button. I will give you about 15 seconds to read that tweet of fuck you. Then you're getting blocked because I don't want to deal with this shit anymore. Thanks for joining us for this episode of DGC. Next month, we'll be playing one of the most popular games on the market, a turn-based JRPG that millions play with every entry. From kids to adults, it does incredibly well every time it comes out. Thanks to a push on Patreon to make it happen, we will be playing Pokemon Sun and Moon in January. It'll be Becky's first time playing a Pokemon game, and as for our audience, if I have to say much about the series, I'd be surprised. After that, we'll be playing... Oh, no, I forgot to write the thing down. After that, we'll be playing Earthbound, which is a Dragon Quest clone-ish as part of a series of games called the Mother series. Leroy likes it a lot. We're going to have a guest on that episode. It's going to be nice. You can find our work on our website, jrpgsaredead.fyi, or our Twitter at jrpgsaredead, or individually at Invisiful for me, at Eat the Pen for Becky, and at Was Not Why Not for Leroy. You can also support us on Patreon at patreon.com/deadgenre. Right, I was going to do a joke here. Once upon a time, there were 17 types and you had to know them all by heart. Thank you, Sun and Moon, for a total eclipse of the chart.
Wow.
Join us next time.
If you want to at us on Twitter
lyric?
to complain about that bit of JRPG lore, you can.
That is from Total Eclipse of the Heart.
Oh,
okay. Join us next time for episode 18 of Dead Genre Chronicles, a total eclipse of the chart. Good night, everyone.